Hey there, welcome to Agile in a Nutshell. I'm your host, Jonathan Rasmussen. One thing I really like about Agile is how it dispenses with the pleasantries and reminds us what our estimates really are. Really bad guesses. But guesses we must give and plans we must turn them into. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to size requirements the Agile way and give you an invaluable tool for creating your first Agile plan. Now let's face it, our industry hasn't exactly had a stellar reputation when it comes to setting expectations around projects. It's like somewhere along the way, people just forgot what our estimates really are. Really bad guesses, and usually overly optimistic ones at that. Steve McConnell calls this the cone of uncertainty, which basically reminds us that at the beginning of a project, we simply have way too many unknowns to have any degree of accuracy around when we think projects are going to be done. Only after building something, measuring how long that takes, and feeding that back into the plan can we get concrete around things like dates. The only question we should be attempting to answer at the beginning of a project is this project even possible given the time and resources we've got? So when it comes to estimation, what we need is a way that allows us to create budgets, plan for the future, reminds us that our estimates are really bad guesses, but also acknowledges the inherent complexities and uncertainty that comes with writing software. Now, there's two things that are going to help us estimate the Agile way. One, we're going to keep things simple. And two, we're going to estimate things relatively. Keeping things simple means assigning one number to the bigness of a story. There are no separate estimates for analysis, development, or testing. It's one number, all rolled up into one, that delivers everything necessary to make the story work. Also, a little effort goes a long way in estimating. We aren't going to spend hours trying to get our estimates just right. We're going to do some analysis, give our best guess, and then quickly move on. Staring at the stuff for days isn't going to help. But what really makes Agile estimation work is sizing stories relatively. Here's what I mean. Let's do a quick experiment. Say I asked you to estimate the size of these two squares as an exact number. Take a few seconds, think hard, and tell me exactly how big each one of these squares are. Okay? Now I'd like you to do the same thing, only this time tell me how big the purple square is compared to the green square. If you guessed 4 times, congratulations, you're a natural estimator. Now the $1 million question is which was easier? Estimating absolutely the first way or estimating relatively the second? If you said the second way, you'd be right. For some reason, we as humans are really good at comparing things relatively. We can do it in a second. It's probably an evolutionary trait harkening back to the days of us having to avoid the jaws of the saber-toothed tigers. Roar! But what we're really good at is doing this sort of thing quickly. We call this relative estimation, and it forms the cornerstone of Agile estimation and planning. Because once we know how fast the team can go, and our stories are sized relatively, we can start setting really good expectations around dates. And we'll get into that later in future episodes on planning. All right, there's just one more thing we need to understand about our Agile estimates, and that is that they're unitless. You see, when we size things relatively, we're measuring bigness, not time. So one calendar day isn't going to equal one size of bigness. It can't. We can estimate that way, but different people work at different speeds. And sometimes things that we think will take 1 day may end up taking 2 days or even half a day. So our units of measure don't really matter. They aren't measurements of time. They're measurements of bigness. So we just call them points and assume that 1 point is something pretty easy, something that would take a day, 3 points for something bigger, a couple days, 5 points for a week, and 10 points for a real biggie, something that would take in the order of 2 weeks. All right, enough theory. Let's see this in action. Let's say that we need to estimate how big it would take us to produce a login page. Now let me just set the stage a bit. Let's say that we've already got our project scope, we've got it defined, we understand what we're building and why. We've done an Agile Inception deck, very important. We've done our story gathering workshop. See the previous user story video for how to do that. And now we're ready to estimate our first story from our master story list. How should we go about this? Well, there's nothing magical about estimating our user stories. You basically just sit down with your customer, ask a lot of questions until you're comfortable with coming up with some sort of guess as to how big you think this thing is. In this case, we might review some mock-ups, go through the story with the customer, kind of walk through the functionality, have our customer tell us what success looks like, write the acceptance criteria in the back of the story, task out what needs to be done, and, now I'm assuming that, of course, you're going to be unit testing, refactoring, and doing all that other good stuff as you go through here, so I'm not writing that out explicitly. And then basically you just give an estimate. You take a guess and say, this thing looks like it's about a 3-pointer. This will take me maybe a couple days. So there we go. We have our first user story sized. Now let's do it again, but this time with a slightly more complicated story, with a little bit more of a complicated screen, a little bit more database work, and some more error checking and validation. We can review our mockups, go through it with the customer, review the acceptance criteria, task it out, and then estimate it. This one we might say takes 5 points. And then we'll do it again, and maybe this next story is a really small, simple one. All we're doing is listing the permits on the screen. This one we'll just call a 1-pointer. Now eventually what's going to happen is we're going to develop a really nice baseline of small, medium, and large size stories for the project. And once we've got that, it's simply a matter of walking the rest of our stories and slotting them into the appropriate places. Now that's really good, but estimation gets even better when you do it as a team. And planning poker is a fun way to size stories as a group. It basically works like this. A customer reads a story to the team, and the development team asks all sorts of questions to make sure they understand what is really required from the story. The team then estimates, and sometimes estimates may be high and sometimes they're going to be low. And a great conversation is about to happen. Why do you think it's so big? Why do you think it's so small? Oh, it's because you forgot this. Oh, well, did you think of that? Whether it's big or small doesn't really matter. What matters is that the team discusses it and someone learns something valuable about the story. Then they estimate again. And hopefully after doing this a couple rounds, the team comes to some sort of consensus around how big the story is, and the team estimate is better than if it was done by just one person. All right, there you have it, the basics of Agile estimation. It's not rocket science. What really matters is getting those stories sized relatively, because if you can do that, the rest of the planning takes care of itself. And now that we've got our story sized, we're ready to take that next big step and create our first ever Agile plan. And hopefully we'll do that next episode. That's all for now. To learn more about Agile estimation, pick up a copy of the Agile Samurai and give you and your team the fighting chance they deserve on their next Agile project. Till next time, bye-bye.